The galactic downfall, King Xenos' fury, was a storm that threatened to consume him. He had once been the most feared ruler in the galaxy, but now his empire teetered on the brink of collapse. His entire fleet had been humiliated by a lone human ship, a defeat that echoed through the ranks of his subjugated worlds. Whispers of rebellion were growing, and the Galactic Council, once his staunch allies, openly questioned his competence. Desperate to restore his authority, Xenos became fixated on the secrets of Earth's advanced technology. He believed that by stealing humanity's cutting-edge weapons, he could crush the upstart species and re-establish himself as the galaxy's unquestioned ruler. With this reckless plan, he set his most trusted advisor, General Craig, to task. In the Grand Throne Room, Xenos' rage was palpable. "This defeat is unacceptable," he roared, his eyes blazing with fury. "The humans have made a mockery of our might." General Craig, sensing the danger in the room, quickly offered a solution. "My king, allow me to assemble a team of our finest spies. Led by the incomparable Agent Zara, they will infiltrate human space, steal their technological secrets, and bring them to you." Xenos, his mind racing with the possibilities, nodded sharply. "See that it is done, Craig. And now, Rock," he turned to his other advisor, his eyes narrowing, "you will spread word of the human threat throughout the Empire. We must unite our people against this common enemy." As the advisors departed, Xenos sank back onto his throne, the name of his nemesis, Captain Nathaniel Davis, echoing in his mind. Davis, the human captain who had outmaneuvered his entire fleet, was a name that Xenos would not forget. But even as his agents began their work, Captain Davis, aboard the Icarus, was already preparing for the next move. "They'll come for our technology," Davis mused, his crew hanging on his every word. "But they'll find more than they bargained for. We'll be ready for them." The stage was set for a deadly game of espionage and brinksmanship, with the future of the galaxy hanging in the balance. The gathering storm. Deep within the fortified rebel base on the barren moon, tension crackled like static in the air. The rebel leaders gathered in the command center, a dimly lit room filled with holographic displays and worn maps. Varia stood at the center, her glowing eyes scanning the faces of her lieutenants. "We must strike now, while the Fangi Empire is in disarray," urged Krax, his scarred face etched with determination. "With King Xenos in our custody, the galaxy will see us as a force to be reckoned with." Varia remained calm, her voice steady. "And what then? Do we provoke the Fangi Empire into full-scale war? We need allies, not enemies. We must be strategic." The room erupted into heated debate. Some, like Krax, pushed for an aggressive assault on the Empire, while others supported Varia's more measured approach. Zara, standing in the shadows, listened intently. Her thoughts were torn between loyalty to her people and the precarious alliance with the rebels. Suddenly, a shrill alarm echoed through the base. All heads turned to the main display, where a crimson alert flashed ominously. An incoming transmission crackled to life, revealing the stern visage of Captain Davis aboard the ISS Icarus. "This is Captain Davis of the Federation," his voice was sharp, commanding attention. "We've tracked your movements and demand the immediate release of King Xenos and the return of the stolen prototype." Varia exchanged a quick glance with Zara before addressing the transmission. "Captain Davis, this is Varia of the Nova Rebel Alliance. We are willing to negotiate, but you must understand." "No negotiations," Davis interrupted, his tone leaving no room for debate. "You're harboring a dangerous fugitive and possessing stolen technology. You have 1 hour to comply, or we will take action." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the room in stunned silence. Varia's expression hardened. "Prepare for battle," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tension. "And get me a secure line to the Galactic Council." Zara's heart pounded as she moved to her station. The Icarus was one of the Federation's most advanced warships, and facing it in open combat was a daunting prospect. Yet, something in her gut told her this confrontation was inevitable. As the rebels scrambled to prepare defenses, Zara found herself thinking of Captain Davis. She had studied his tactics, respected his strategic brilliance, and now she was about to face him in battle. The thought sent a shiver down her spine. In the brig, King Xenos paced his cell, his eyes blazing with barely restrained fury. His once ornate armor now hung in tatters, a stark reminder of his fall from power. He knew the rebels were divided, and he planned to exploit that division. "You're making a grave mistake," Xenos growled at the guard posted outside his cell. "Release me now, and I'll ensure your survival when the Empire inevitably crushes this pitiful rebellion." The guard, a young alien soldier with nervous eyes, said nothing, but Xenos could see the fear in his gaze. Good. Fear was a tool he could wield, even from behind bars. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Icarus, Captain Davis studied the holographic map of the rebel base. His crew worked in tense silence, their fingers flying over consoles as they prepared for the impending assault. "Status report," Davis barked, his eyes fixed on the red blip representing the rebel stronghold. "We're ready," Captain, replied Lieutenant Mira, her voice steady. "Weapon systems are online, and shields are at full power. We're just waiting on your command." Davis nodded, his mind racing. He knew this battle would be a turning point, not just for the Federation, but for the entire galaxy. If the rebels succeeded in holding Xenos, it could spark widespread rebellion across the Empire. But if he could capture Xenos and destroy the rebel base, it would send a message that the Federation would not tolerate insurrection. "Hold position for now," Davis ordered. "Let's see if they're willing to talk before we start a war." Back on the moon, Varia finally managed to secure a line to the Galactic Council. The holographic image of Councillor Taros, an elder of the Galactic Council, flickered into view. His furrowed brow and somber expression conveyed the gravity of the situation. "Councillor Taros," Varia began, her tone respectful yet urgent, "we request your intervention. We have King Xenos in custody, and we seek to negotiate a peaceful resolution." Taros studied her for a moment before responding. "Varia, the Council is aware of your situation. However, you must understand that harboring a fugitive and stolen technology places you in a precarious position. The Federation will not back down." "Then help us broker a deal," Varia implored. "We don't want more bloodshed, but we won't surrender without ensuring the safety of our people." Taros sighed, the weight of his responsibilities evident. "I will see what I can do. But understand this, time is running out. The Federation will not wait forever." As the communication ended, Varia turned to Zara, who had been listening from across the room. "Prepare our forces," Varia said quietly, "and make sure the prototype is secured. If this turns into a fight, we need every advantage we can get." Zara nodded, her mind already calculating the odds. She knew the coming battle would test them all, but she was determined to protect her people and the fragile alliance she had helped build. Outside, the barren landscape of the moon remained eerily still, the calm before the storm. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, with both sides poised for a conflict that could change the course of history. The first strike. The hours dragged on with an oppressive weight as the rebel base prepared for the inevitable. Every corner was bustling with activity as soldiers armed themselves, engineers fine-tuned defensive systems, and medics set up makeshift infirmaries. The cold, sterile atmosphere of the moon base was charged with tension, a quiet dread hanging over everyone. Zara moved through the base with purpose, her mind focused on the coming battle. She had grown accustomed to the life of a rebel, but this felt different, more perilous. As she passed by groups of soldiers and technicians, she could see the anxiety in their eyes, the weight of what was to come reflected in their tense movements. In the command center, Varia monitored the situation with a grim determination. She had faced many challenges in her time as leader of the Nova Rebel Alliance, but none quite like this. The Federation was a formidable foe, and Captain Davis was known for his ruthlessness. "Status on our defenses?" Varia asked, her eyes not leaving the tactical display. "We've fortified the perimeter, and the shield generator is at full capacity," replied Krax, who stood by her side, his expression steely. "But against the Icarus, it may not be enough." Varia nodded. "We must buy time. Councillor Taros is trying to mediate, but if the Federation attacks, we'll need to hold them off long enough for him to succeed." As if on cue, a loud klaxon blared through the base, signaling an incoming attack. The command center erupted into action, with officers shouting orders and screens flickering with new data. "They're here," Zara murmured to herself as she looked at the screen showing the Icarus approaching, flanked by smaller Federation ships. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she steeled herself, knowing that hesitation could be fatal. Varia's voice rang out, calm yet authoritative. "All stations, prepare for combat. Shields up, deploy fighters." Outside, the desolate landscape of the moon was suddenly alive with motion. The rebel base's energy shield shimmered into existence, a translucent dome that hummed with power. Squadrons of rebel fighters launched from hidden hangars, their engines roaring as they streaked toward the encroaching Federation fleet. On the bridge of the Icarus, Captain Davis watched the unfolding scene with a cold, calculating gaze. He knew the rebels were well prepared, but he also knew the Federation had the upper hand in firepower and technology. "Launch the first wave," Davis ordered. "Target their shield generators and key defensive positions." Federation fighters and bombers surged forward, their sleek forms slicing through the void as they unleashed a barrage of laser fire and missiles. The rebels' shield absorbed the initial impacts, but the force of the assault sent shockwaves rippling through the base. Inside, Zara felt the floor beneath her tremble as explosions rocked the facility. She could hear the muffled sounds of distant firefights, the desperate shouts of soldiers, and the dull thuds of impacts against the shield. Despite the chaos, she remained focused, directing the rebels' counterattack with precision. "Concentrate fire on their bombers," Zara commanded, her voice cutting through the noise. "We can't let them breach the shield." Rebel fighters swarmed the attacking Federation ships, engaging in fierce dogfights above the moon's surface. Bright flashes of laser fire illuminated the dark sky as the two forces clashed, each side determined to overpower the other. In the midst of the battle, the Icarus held back, its massive cannons trained on the rebel base. Captain Davis watched the tactical display intently, waiting for the right moment to strike. He knew that a direct assault on the shield would be costly, but if they could weaken it first. "Lieutenant Mira, prepare to fire the main cannon," Davis ordered. "We'll target their shield generator directly. On my mark." As the battle raged on, Varia kept a close eye on the shield's status. The energy levels were dropping steadily under the relentless assault, and she knew they couldn't hold out much longer. "Zara," Varia called out, turning to her lieutenant. "We need to evacuate non-combat personnel to the lower levels. If the shield fails, we'll need to minimize casualties." Zara nodded, already issuing the orders. "Understood. I'll oversee the evacuation. But what about the prototype?" Varia hesitated, her expression conflicted. "It's our best bargaining chip, but it's also too dangerous to let it fall into the wrong hands. If it comes to it, we may have to destroy it." Zora's eyes widened, but she didn't argue. The prototype, a powerful experimental weapon, was the reason the Federation was here. If it fell into Federation hands, it could tip the balance of power across the galaxy. As the evacuation began, Zara hurried through the base, coordinating the movement of civilians and injured soldiers to safer areas. The ground shook with each distant explosion, but she kept her focus, determined to protect those under her care. Back in the command center, Varia watched as the shield's energy levels dropped to critical. Her heart sank as she realized they were running out of time. "Captain Davis is not one to bluff," she muttered, her thoughts racing. "We have to make a decision." But before she could act, the Icarus unleashed its main cannon. A blinding beam of energy shot forth, striking the rebel shield with devastating force. The shield flickered, strained, and then shattered, sending shards of energy cascading across the landscape. "Shield down," an officer shouted as alarms blared throughout the base. Varia's expression hardened. "All units, prepare for ground assault. We'll make our stand here." As the Federation forces advanced, the rebel base became a battlefield. Explosions rocked the ground, and the air was filled with the sounds of gunfire and the screams of the wounded. Rebel soldiers fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. In the chaos, Zara found herself in a desperate struggle to protect the prototype. She had relocated it to a secure vault deep within the base, but she knew it was only a matter of time before the Federation breached their defenses. Meanwhile, King Xenos, still in his cell, could hear the distant sounds of battle. A twisted smile curled his lips. The more chaotic the situation became, the more likely it was that he could find a way to escape and reclaim his empire. As the battle reached a fever pitch, Zara received a transmission from Varia. "Zara, we can't hold them off much longer. I'm ordering a full retreat to the lower levels. Destroy the prototype if they get too close." Zara's heart pounded in her chest. She knew what was at stake. With a heavy heart, she prepared to carry out the order, praying it wouldn't come to that. But as the Federation forces closed in, Zara knew the moment of decision was fast approaching. The fate of the rebellion, and possibly the entire galaxy, hinged on what she did next. The last line of defense, the battle had escalated into a full-scale siege. The Federation forces, bolstered by their advanced technology and overwhelming numbers, pushed relentlessly toward the heart of the rebel base. Each inch they gained was paid for in blood, but they were inexorable, driven by Captain Davis's unwavering command. Zara was deep within the base, standing before the reinforced vault that housed the prototype. The heavy metal door, lined with layers of protective shielding, hummed with energy. She knew that the vault was designed to withstand almost anything the Federation could throw at it, but even the strongest walls could only hold out for so long. Her comm crackled to life, and Varia's voice came through, strained but clear. "Zara, what's your status?" "I'm at the vault," Zara replied, her eyes never leaving the door. "We're almost out of time. How are we holding up?" There was a pause, and Zara could hear the sounds of combat in the background, blaster fire, shouts, and the distant rumble of explosions. "Not well," Varia admitted. "The Federation has breached the upper levels. We're pulling back to the secondary defensive positions. We can't let them reach the vault." Zara clenched her fists, frustration and fear warring within her. "I'm ready to destroy the prototype if it comes to it. But it's not just a weapon," Varia finished for her. "It's a symbol of hope. We've worked so hard to keep it out of Federation hands. But if they take it..." Zara knew what Varia left unsaid. The prototype was more than just a powerful device. It represented the last, desperate chance for the rebellion to turn the tide against the Federation. If they lost it, they lost everything. "Stay strong, Zara," Varia urged. "We'll hold the line as long as we can. Just be ready." Zara nodded, even though Varia couldn't see her. "I will. Good luck, Varia." As the connection ended, Zara turned to the small team of engineers and soldiers who had stayed behind with her. They were a mix of seasoned veterans and younger recruits, all of them steely-eyed and resolute despite the odds. "We have our orders," Zara said, her voice firm. "If they break through, we destroy the prototype. But until then, we fight." The soldiers nodded, and the engineers checked their equipment one last time. They all knew what was at stake, and they were prepared to do whatever it took to protect the rebellion's most valuable asset. Outside the vault, the battle raged on. The Federation forces, now fully inside the base, were met with fierce resistance from the rebel defenders. The narrow corridors and fortified positions played to the rebels' advantage, forcing the Federation troops into brutal, close-quarters combat. Captain Davis monitored the progress from the command deck of the Icarus, his eyes narrowed in concentration. The battle was going well, but it wasn't over yet. He knew that the final confrontation would be in the depths of the base, where the prototype was hidden. "Prepare the breach team," Davis ordered. "Once the main force has secured the lower levels, we move in. I want that prototype intact." As the Federation troops pushed deeper into the base, the rebels fought with desperate ferocity. Every hallway, every room became a battlefield, and the air was thick with smoke and the acrid smell of burning metal. Despite their valor, the rebels were slowly being overwhelmed. In the command center, Varia watched the tactical displays with a heavy heart. The red blips representing Federation troops were steadily advancing, and the green dots of her forces were dwindling. "Hold the line," Varia shouted into the comms. "We can't let them through." But even as she gave the order, she knew they were running out of time. The Federation was relentless, and their superior numbers were taking their toll. The sounds of the battle were getting closer, and Varia could feel the vibrations through the floor as explosions rocked the base. In the vault, Zara and her team waited in tense silence. The minutes felt like hours, and every distant sound made them jump. Zara's hand hovered over the detonator switch, her mind racing through every possible scenario. Suddenly, the door to the vault rattled with the impact of an explosion, followed by the sound of blaster fire. The Federation had reached them. "Positions," Zara barked, and the soldiers quickly moved to cover, their weapons trained on the door. Another explosion rocked the vault, and the door began to glow as a plasma cutter started to slice through the reinforced metal. The Federation was breaching their last line of defense. Zara's heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to stay calm. "We hold them here. No matter what, we can't let them get through." The soldiers nodded grimly, and the engineers moved to the back of the room, ready to activate the self-destruct if it came to that. The door shuddered again, and then with a deafening crash, it was blown inward. A group of heavily armed Federation soldiers stormed into the vault, their weapons blazing. The rebels returned fire, and the room was filled with the bright flashes of energy weapons and the deafening roar of battle. Zara fought with everything she had, her blaster cutting down one enemy after another, but the Federation troops kept coming. Despite their bravery, the rebels were outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, Zara's comrades fell, until she was the last one standing. She retreated to the control panel where the detonator was set up, ready to do what had to be done. But as she reached for the switch, a blaster bolt struck her in the shoulder, sending her sprawling to the floor. The pain was searing, but she grit her teeth and reached out with her other hand. Before she could activate the detonator, a boot came down on her hand, pinning it to the ground. Zara looked up to see Captain Davis standing over her, his expression cold and victorious. "Don't bother," he said, his voice calm. "It's over." Zara struggled against his grip, but she was too weak. The Federation soldiers secured the vault, and the prototype was in their hands. Davis looked down at her, a hint of admiration in his eyes. "You fought well, but now it's time to end this." Zara glared at him, her anger and frustration boiling over. "You have no idea what you've done. This isn't just a weapon, it's the end of everything you think you've won." Davis frowned, but before he could respond, the vault's alarm system suddenly blared. The lights flickered, and a deep rumbling sound echoed through the base. Zara smiled grimly. "You might have taken the prototype, but you've triggered the failsafe." Davis's eyes widened as he realized what she meant. The prototype wasn't just a weapon, it was also a trap. If activated without the proper codes, it would unleash a massive energy wave, capable of destroying everything within a 100-mile radius. The soldiers around him panicked, but Davis remained calm, quickly issuing orders to evacuate. He knew they had only minutes to escape before the failsafe activated. As the Federation troops scrambled to get out, Zara managed to pull herself up, leaning against the control panel. The pain in her shoulder was excruciating, but she took some solace in knowing that even in defeat, they had denied the Federation their prize. With the last of her strength, she pressed the emergency lockdown button, sealing the vault and trapping the remaining soldiers inside. As the rumbling grew louder and the lights flickered more violently, Zara closed her eyes, accepting her fate. The prototype's failsafe would activate soon, and there would be no escape. But as she prepared for the end, a voice crackled through her comm. "Zara, it's Varia. We're still here. We're coming to get you." Zara's eyes snapped open. Varia hadn't given up, even in the face of overwhelming odds. The hope that had seemed so distant now burned brightly within her. "Varia," Zara gasped, forcing herself to speak. "The prototype, it's going to blow." "We know," Varia replied, her voice filled with determination. "But we're not leaving without you." As the base continued to shake and the countdown to the failsafe ticked away, Zara realized that their fight wasn't over yet. They had one last chance to escape and to keep the rebellion alive. The escape plan. The base was on the verge of collapse, and the air was thick with tension. The Federation soldiers outside the vault were frantically attempting to breach the emergency lockdown, their panic palpable. Inside, Zara struggled to stay conscious, her vision blurred from pain and exhaustion. "Zara, hold on." Varia's voice crackled through the comm, filled with urgency. "We've got a plan, but we need you to hang in there." Zara glanced at the countdown on the prototype's control panel. Less than 5 minutes remained before the failsafe would trigger the energy wave, obliterating everything in its radius. She fought to keep her focus. "What's the plan?" she managed to ask. "We're going to override the base's reactor controls," Varia explained. "We'll redirect the power to the vault's shields and create a temporary breach in the lockdown. It won't hold for long, but it should buy us enough time to get you out." Zara's mind raced, processing the plan. It was risky, but at this point, they had no other options. "What do I need to do?" she asked, steeling herself. "Get ready to move as soon as the shields go up," Varia replied. "We'll be waiting for you just outside the vault. The moment the door opens, you run, understand?" "Understood," Zara said, her voice firmer now. She pushed herself to her feet, wincing as pain shot through her injured shoulder. She knew she couldn't let the pain slow her down, not when the stakes were this high. Outside the vault, Captain Davis was barking orders, trying to keep his troops in line as they struggled to find a way to disable the lockdown. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, and he knew they were running out of time. The realization that they might not make it out in time weighed heavily on him. "Get those charges in place," Davis shouted to a group of engineers who were frantically setting up explosives around the vault's entrance. "We need to breach this door now." The engineers worked quickly, but the seconds ticked away relentlessly. Davis checked his wrist device, the countdown to the failsafe blaring back at him. He turned to his second-in-command, a look of grim determination on his face. "If we can't get that door open in the next 2 minutes, we're pulling out. We'll have to accept the loss." Before his officer could respond, the base's lighting flickered again, this time with more intensity. The hum of the reactor shifted, and the sound of machinery whirring to life echoed through the halls. "What the hell is going on?" Davis muttered, eyes narrowing. He turned back to the vault, noticing the faint glow of the energy shields beginning to form around it. "They're trying something. Get ready." Inside the vault, Zara could feel the floor vibrating beneath her feet as the base's reactor output surged. The shields around the vault shimmered to life, casting an eerie light over the room. The sound of the heavy door mechanisms unlocking filled the space, and Zara knew her moment had come. "Shields are up." Varia's voice cut through the noise. "Go, Zara, go." With a deep breath, Zara sprinted toward the vault door, ignoring the pain lancing through her shoulder. The door slid open just enough for her to slip through, and she didn't hesitate. She darted into the corridor, where Varia and a small team of rebels were waiting. "Let's move," Varia shouted, leading the way down the hallway. The rebels covered Zara as they ran, firing at any Federation soldiers who tried to intercept them. The sound of blaster fire echoed around them, but they kept moving, driven by the urgency of the ticking clock. As they raced through the base, Zara could hear the distant roar of explosions as the Federation soldiers tried to breach the vault and disarm the failsafe, but she knew they wouldn't make it in time. The failsafe was too far along, and the prototype was moments away from unleashing its devastating power. The rebels reached an access shaft that led to the surface. Varia motioned for Zara to climb first. "Hurry, we don't have much time." Zara didn't need to be told twice. She scrambled up the ladder, her injured shoulder protesting with every movement. The rest of the team followed closely behind, with Varia bringing up the rear. As they climbed, the rumbling from the base grew louder, the entire structure shaking violently as the failsafe countdown neared its end. They emerged onto the surface, the cold night air, a stark contrast to the heat and chaos they had just left behind. The rebel forces were already falling back to their ships, preparing for a hasty retreat. Varia grabbed Zara's arm, pulling her toward one of the waiting transports. "We're almost out of time. Get on board." As they boarded the transport, the ground beneath them rumbled ominously. The transport's engines roared to life, and within seconds, they were airborne, racing away from the base. Zara looked out the viewport, her heart pounding as she watched the base shrink into the distance. The countdown in her mind reached 0 just as a blinding flash of light erupted from the center of the base. The prototype's failsafe had triggered. The shockwave that followed was immense, a ripple of energy that spread out in all directions, tearing through the landscape and obliterating everything in its path. The transport shuddered from the force of the explosion, but it held steady, its engines straining to keep them ahead of the destruction. Zara could only watch as the base, and everything within it, was consumed by the energy wave. The Federation forces, caught in the blast, had no chance of escape. The light faded, and the rumbling subsided, leaving behind a desolate, scorched wasteland where the base had once stood. Zara leaned back in her seat, a mixture of relief and sorrow washing over her. They had lost the prototype, but they had also denied it to the Federation. The rebellion would live on, and their fight would continue. Varia sat down beside her, her expression somber. "We did what we had to do." Zara nodded, her gaze distant. "We'll need to regroup, plan our next move. The Federation won't stop coming after us." "We'll be ready," Varia replied with quiet determination. "We've lost a battle, but the war is far from over." As the transport sped away into the night, Zara allowed herself a moment to breathe. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but for now, they had survived. And as long as they could keep fighting, there was still hope. The rebellion, battered but unbroken, would rise again. The aftermath. The transport glided through the dark expanse of space, its passengers silent as they processed the events of the past hours. Zara sat near the viewport, watching the stars streak by, her mind heavy with the weight of their narrow escape and the loss of the prototype. The Federation might have been denied their prize, but the cost had been high. Varia approached and took a seat beside her, her presence a comforting anchor in the vastness of space. "You did good back there," she said softly, breaking the silence. Zara glanced at her, a tired smile tugging at her lips. "We all did, but it feels like we're just delaying the inevitable. The Federation will keep coming." Varia nodded, her expression serious. "They will, but every battle we win, every step we take, we're buying time. Time to gather strength, time to find allies, time to figure out how to end this for good." Zara knew she was right, but the toll of constant fighting weighed heavily on her. The rebellion was a cause worth fighting for, but it was a cause that demanded everything, sometimes too much. "Do you ever wonder if we'll live to see the end of this war?" Zara asked quietly. "Every day," Varia admitted. "But it's not about whether we see the end, it's about making sure there is an end, even if we're not there to witness it. That's what keeps me going." Zara leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. Varia's words resonated with her, reminding her of why she had joined the rebellion in the first place. It wasn't just about survival, it was about making a difference, no matter the cost. The comm system crackled to life, interrupting her thoughts. The pilot's voice echoed through the transport. "We're approaching the rendezvous point. Prepare for docking." Zara opened her eyes, taking a deep breath to steady herself. "Let's see what's left of us," she said, rising from her seat. Varia followed, and together they made their way to the transport's main hold, where the rest of the rebels were gathered. The mood in the hold was somber. The rebels had lost comrades today, and the weight of that loss was palpable. But there was also a sense of resilience, a determination to keep fighting no matter the odds. As the transport docked with the rebel fleet's command ship, Zara and Varia disembarked and were greeted by Commander Rykov, the leader of the rebellion. His weathered face was a map of scars and experience, but his eyes held a fierce intensity that spoke of his unwavering commitment to their cause. Zara, Varia, Rykov greeted them with a nod. "I'm glad you made it out." "Barely," Zara replied, her voice tinged with exhaustion. "The prototype is gone, along with the base." Rykov's expression hardened, but he nodded. "We knew it was a risk, but you made the right call. The Federation won't get their hands on that weapon, and that's what matters." Varia stepped forward, her tone resolute. "What's our next move, Commander?" Rykov folded his arms, his gaze sweeping over the gathered rebels. "We regroup, assess our losses, and then we plan our next strike. The Federation won't let this go unanswered, so we need to be ready for whatever they throw at us." Zara glanced around at the faces of her fellow rebels. Some were familiar, comrades she'd have fought alongside for months or even years. Others were new, their eyes reflecting a mix of fear and determination. The rebellion was always in flux, its ranks bolstered by new recruits even as it suffered casualties. It was a constant reminder of the stakes they were playing for. "Zara," Rykov's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "You've been through a lot today. Get some rest. We'll need you sharp for what's coming." Zara hesitated, but the wariness in her bones made the decision for her. She nodded. "I'll be ready," she promised before turning to leave. Varia caught her arm, offering a reassuring squeeze. "We'll get through this," she said, her confidence unwavering. "One battle at a time." Zara managed a grateful smile. "I know. Thanks, Varia." As she made her way to her quarters, Zara couldn't help but feel the weight of the war pressing down on her. But she also felt a flicker of hope, a small but enduring flame that refused to be extinguished. Once inside her quarters, she sat on the edge of her bunk, her mind racing despite her exhaustion. The war was far from over, and the Federation would undoubtedly retaliate with even greater force. But the rebellion had survived another day, and as long as they kept surviving, there was a chance to turn the tide. Zara lay back on the bunk, staring up at the ceiling. The stars outside the viewport seemed distant and cold, but they were also a reminder of the vastness of the galaxy and the possibilities that lay within it. As sleep began to pull her under, Zara allowed herself to believe that one day they would find a way to end the war. One day, they would see a galaxy free from the tyranny of the Federation. And until that day came, she would keep fighting. Shadows of the past. The distant hum of the ship's engines was a constant backdrop as Zara slept, her dreams fragmented by memories of battles, lost friends, and the ceaseless struggle against the Federation. When she awoke, it was with a start, the remnants of a nightmare clinging to her mind. She took a moment to steady herself, the weight of the war pressing heavily on her shoulders as she prepared for another day. The ship's corridors were quiet as she made her way to the briefing room, the early hour ensuring most of the crew was still in their quarters. As she walked, Zara's thoughts drifted to the upcoming mission. The rebellion's survival depended on the success of their next move, and the pressure was immense. Entering the briefing room, Zara found Varia and Commander Rykov already deep in conversation. The holo-table between them displayed a rotating image of a heavily fortified space station, one of the Federation's key outposts in the sector. "Zara," Rykov greeted her as she approached, his tone grave. "We've been going over the plans for our next operation. This station is our target." Zara studied the hologram, Noting the station's formidable defenses, what's the objective? Rykov zoomed in on a specific section of the station. Intelligence suggests that the Federation has been using this outpost as a research facility for their new weapons. We need to disable it, but more importantly, we need to retrieve any data they've collected. Varia crossed her arms, her brow furrowed. It's going to be a tough mission. The station is heavily guarded, and there's a high chance of running into elite Federation forces. Zara nodded, her mind already racing through potential strategies. We'll need a small, fast team. Infiltration will be key. Hit them hard and fast before they have a chance to respond. Rykov looked at her with approval. Exactly. You and Varia will lead the strike team. We'll provide support from the fleet, but once you're inside, you'll be on your own. Zara felt a familiar mix of anxiety and determination. This was the kind of mission that could make or break the rebellion's chances in this sector. We'll get it done, she said firmly, meeting Rykov's gaze. Varia placed a hand on her shoulder, her expression confident. We faced worse odds. We'll pull through. The briefing continued, with Rykov outlining the details of the mission. Zara listened intently, committing every detail to memory. The plan was risky, but it was their best shot at crippling the Federation's operations in the area. As the briefing concluded, Rykov dismissed them with a final word of encouragement. We're counting on you. Good luck out there. Zara and Varia left the room together, the weight of the mission heavy on their minds. As they walked, Zara couldn't shake the feeling that there was more at stake than just the data. The Federation's increasing aggression hinted at something bigger, something that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy. I've been thinking, Zara said as they made their way to the armory. The Federation's been pushing harder lately, almost like they're desperate. What if they've got something big planned? Varia glanced at her, considering her words. It's possible. We've been hearing rumors about a new weapon, something that could change the course of the war. If they're putting all their resources into it, that would explain their aggression. Zara's mind raced. If the Federation was close to deploying a new weapon, then their mission to retrieve the data became even more critical. We can't let them get the upper hand. If we can find out what they're planning, we might be able to stop it before it's too late. Varia nodded in agreement. Then we'd better make sure this mission is a success. The stakes are higher than ever. They reached the armory and began suiting up, the familiar ritual of dumbing their gear helping to focus their minds on the task ahead. Zara's armor felt like a second skin, its weight a comforting reminder of the battles she had survived. As they prepared to depart, Zara found herself thinking about the people they had lost, the sacrifices that had been made to keep the rebellion alive. The faces of fallen comrades flashed through her mind, a stark reminder of the cost of this war. But she also thought of the future they were fighting for, a future where the galaxy was free from the Federation's tyranny, where people could live without fear of oppression. It was that vision that kept her going, that gave her the strength to face the challenges ahead. Ready? Varia's voice broke through her thoughts, bringing her back to the present. Zara nodded, her resolve solidifying. Let's do this. With their team assembled and the mission set, they'd boarded the small strike ship that would take them to the Federation outpost. The journey was tense, the crew silent as they steeled themselves for the fight to come. As the strike ship approached the outpost, Zara felt the familiar rush of adrenaline that always accompanied the onset of battle. The station loomed ahead, a massive structure bristling with weapons and defenses. This was it, their chance to strike a blow against the Federation and turn the tide of the war. The ship slipped past the outer defenses, its stealth systems keeping them hidden from the station's sensors. Zara's heart pounded as they closed in on their entry point, the tension in the air palpable. The strike ship docked with the station, and as the airlock cycled open, Zara led her team into the dark, silent corridors of the outpost. They moved quickly and quietly, their footsteps barely making a sound as they navigated the maze-like interior. Zara's focus was razor-sharp, her mind locked on the mission. The fate of the rebellion could hinge on what they discovered here, and she was determined not to fail. As they approached the data core, the air grew thick with the sense of impending conflict. They were deep inside enemy territory, surrounded by the unknown, and every shadow seemed to hold a potential threat. But Zara pushed those thoughts aside, focusing instead on the task at hand. They were here to gather intelligence, to disrupt the Federation's plans, and to strike a blow that would reverberate throughout the galaxy. And they would do it, no matter the cost.